Good morning. Menswear fashion season's keeping us on our toes, and we'll get to fashion shows. But first of all, let's talk about political news that all of a sudden became fashion news. That is no one else but Melania Trump, who grabbed all the headlines from the inauguration day. We're here to discuss it with menswear editor ANDRONIKI XIMERI, fashion journalist LAIA FARRAN GRAVES, and business consultant Rachel REAVLEY. And Rachel, you are a consultant to many fashion businesses, and what an interesting thing happened that Eric Javits and Adam Lips, two American designers, Melania chose to wear only American designers, whether it's a statement or not, we don't know, but they were not so well-known fashion designers. And I wonder, as a consultant, if fashion designers that are not so well-known came to you and said, well, look, we have this opportunity to dress Melania Trump, but we're kind of scared of being affiliated with certain political views. What do we do? Shall we dress her? Shall we not?
Well, you definitely have to take a nuanced approach, and you have to kind of step back and also maybe put your own kind of views to one side on something like this, because it's very polarizing. And I think if you were, you know, depending what your brand values are, depending kind of what your short and long-term goals are, but if you're a brand, let's say, who just recently aligned yourself with some socially progressive movements, maybe this wasn't the gig for you. But however, if you are somebody who wants to be catapulted onto a global stage, there is not really one much bigger than what just happened. And let's face it, we all wanted to know what she was going to be wearing and how she was going to be wearing it. So it would be hard not to be tempted to kind of be drawn into that. I think to mitigate any risk around it, you would be definitely wanting to kind of use your communication tools to say that this is about the event itself. This is not about an ideological political alignment. This is literally about the celebration of American craftsmanship, as well as artistry, as well as looking for a wider consumer base that might be a patriotic kind of consumer. And I think 2025 is a very different inauguration to 2017. And I think the look that was back then of wearing kind of Ralph Lauren royalty and it being a kind of very Jackie Kennedy-esque kind of soft vision, we had a completely different type of empowered Melania that kind of walked out. And I think you have to be prepared for some backlash, because obviously you can't, as I said, identify with somebody so polarized. But I think at the same time, you know, we don't really hear her voice. So there is some sort of, you know, interesting kind of commentary on that in itself.
She speaks through her clothes,
I think very much so. And I thought, to me particular, we have to mention the hat. The hat's had a lot of its kind of its own journey. But I was really fascinated to learn that that kind of type of millinery really came about in trend in Victorian era. And that peak was about giving women their own sense of space. And I thought that was kind of interesting. Maybe she had a metaphor for us that we were...
That she needs space.
Yes.
That's her way of saying it, right?
Or that she was creating her own space, that she is, in a sense,
she definitely
her own
had
woman.
some space. I mean, Donald Trump tried to give her a kiss. He couldn't reach her,
say,
right?
certainly worked for that.
Speaking of space, absolutely. Yeah. Last question about Melania Trump. Do you think fashion brands that were so against and so vocal, including, let's say, Tom Ford, who was so vocal going in the press saying, I would never dress Melania Trump, do you think these people who had a lot to say back then and now seeing the effect that she has and the business that she has behind dressing the First Lady, do you think they have some sort of regret?
That's a question for them, really, but unlikely, I'd say, because I think if you have strong ideals and strong principles, then you'll stick by them.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think if you're, if you've taken that stance and you align yourself with certain views, then you're probably okay with where you've stood.
Thank you so much. Now let's talk about menswear fashion season, because I haven't had the time to watch all the shows, and you have the luxury to do that, attend the shows, watch the shows. Update me, what are the trends that we are seeing? Okay,
so this has been a really interesting menswear season in that I've seen a real change, a real kind of evolution, silhouette-wise, from last season. I've picked up about 5 trends that I'm seeing emerging. Of course, we're halfway through. There's still Paris to happen, but so far, I've seen 5 strong trends in the current season. One is a very sort of monochrome neutral palette. So a lot of grays, a lot of browns, a lot of black shades, even kind of neutral colors, and sort of quite monochrome with some accents. So for example, at Louis Vuitton, maybe a pink bag or a pink jacket, at Prada, perhaps there was like some yellow boots or a red gilet parka, like a puffer jacket, those kind of things. So that's the first thing. The colors were quite striking in that sense because we've seen a lot more color in the past, and this time it was fairly monochrome. Big statement coats, oversized big statement coats, which are great. And there's just some incredible, incredible coats. If you're a coat lover,
I am. Give me the bigger, the better.
Well, this is your season for sure. They come in all shapes and sizes. Beautiful, beautiful, you know, some very street, some very sophisticated. But yeah, really interesting. Prada had a lot of kind of like fake fur with them. So for instance, at Louis Vuitton, they're so great with outerwear. I mean, there was a whole array, but really elegant, really beautiful, but really street. We saw also maybe Dolce & Gabbana, some really kind of glamorous coats. So really something for everybody. There's less accessories in an obvious way, but they're almost kind of, there's more like a curated accessory sort of going on. So less is more sort of thing. So as I think Coco Chanel used to say, whenever you go out, check yourself in the mirror and get rid of one thing.
I've never heard that quote. That's brilliant. I'm going to do that from now on.
Yeah, you just check yourself in the mirror, take that off, or whatever, you know.
I love that.
Because too much can be too much. I think what a lot of designers have done is maybe that, you know, just really kind of look at the shape, the silhouette, the feeling of the whole collection, and just given it enough, but not too much.
Which is very interesting from business point of view, because accessories is where the money is.
Yes.
So throw those accessories in, right? Which is very interesting. Ready to wear, you know.
Yeah.
It's the 1%.
I mean, they are still there, though. Just, you know, where we've seen trends where there's been like bag over bag over bag, now there's just one bag. So maybe less is more. There still will be a huge market for the accessories, but they've just been kind of pre-selected for us, I feel. And then there's one last trend that I've picked up, which is this kind of like dandy silhouette. There's a lot of beautiful, beautiful tailoring that throws you back to sort of a bit of a 1920s Chanel, Coco Chanel, when she was first wearing trousers, and a bit of a 1950s kind of glamour.
Just mentioned dandyism on that note. Do you think that trend is coming from the Met Gala because that is the theme next May?
That's really interesting. I didn't actually realize that was the theme, but I think sometimes things do happen. I remember early on when I started reviewing shows, I'd always find it fascinating that you'd go and see like a week of shows and the same shade of blue would have come up like 5 or 6 times. So perhaps, you know, it could be...
I was saying it starts from that textile moment where people somehow are drawn to something, and then by osmosis it finds its way weaved in and out of lots of different collections at the same point. But you're not really quite sure how that magic happened.
Yes, precisely.
Androniki, you just got back from Italy. What are the shows that are must-watch from Milan Fashion Week?
Absolutely. First of all, I would like to say in regards to what LAIA just mentioned, there are some differences with PT Uomo and Milan Fashion Week that I have noticed. For example, the fact of the accessories, we had a lot of bold accessories in PT Uomo, whereas when somebody thinks about PT, thinks that is more conservative rather than Milan Fashion Week. But this year, something different happened. So we had more bold overcoats rather than the previous years. We had more big accessories like bee bags, and we had a lot of bow ties and big neckties. So I think that's the difference from the previous years in terms of accessories. And what I did notice from Milan Fashion Week and also PT Uomo, the big trends were, of course, the long, bold, and very sexy overcoats of men. We had a lot of layering. We had a lot of fur, which is something that probably perhaps came from the feminine aspect that we can see now in menswear as well, where we can see the two words merging, which is quite fascinating. And we had a lot of futuristic military. So this is something I love watching it. And in terms of Milan Fashion Week, I must highlight the Brioni show, which I really loved it, because they had also the dancing performance, which I find it like they wanted to relate it to their actual collection, being effortlessly loose and very comfy. And
Brioni is living their best life at the moment with Donald Trump. It's his favorite brand, and he wears exclusively Brioni, doesn't he? So this is a golden age for them, especially in America. That makes me think of business. Mehula has just appointed their new CEO. Mehula owns Valentino, owns Palzolari and Balmain. The new CEO, what does that mean? What Mehula Group needs, Rachel?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, Ricardo has such an amazing track record, and he's incredible at modernizing and repositioning brands. I mean, the job that he did at Chloe was superb, and he brought a lot of sustainability and ESG into that business, and they, went on to become a B Corp certified company. So I think he also brings a lot of digital transformation and innovation. He's very good at driving your business more D2C, which I think is incredibly important in this landscape, to own that end customer. And I think with that becomes a sort of progressive movement towards also being able to potentially speak to a younger customer, a more Gen Z customer. I think with Alessandro being from Gucci into Valentino, he obviously himself, seems to have experimented previously with NFTs and augmented reality. So you could see possibly that innovation that might come across the group. But of course, with anything that is created as a group role, there's going to be efficiencies that come into play. And you can sort of imagine that there'd be a landscape of looking, how do we, pool resources, whether that's across manufacturing or marketing or sharing talent. So you would think that sort of back of house, there would be a sort of viewpoint. But again, looking at underutilized markets or breaking more out into lifestyle and beauty. So I think he's brilliantly positioned to really take that brand forward as a group.
And it is an interesting time for Alessandro Michele, who just started, and all of a sudden now he will have a new boss to report to, bearing in mind he's leading the next chapter for Valentino, which just reminds me of the musical chairs that continue in the fashion industry. Well, new rumors just came to surface this week, for those who don't know, that perhaps Daniel Lee might be leaving Burberry. We also heard last week that Kim Jones might be leaving Dior, giving Dior entirely to Jonathan Anderson. Internet has spoken, and there's only one rumor going around, that Daniel Lee is going to Jill Sander and Kim Jones is going to Burberry. Do we trust this gossip?
I think it's very likely. Certainly, Daniel Lee, I think there has been rumors about him leaving for a while. I think since when the CEO, Joshua Schulman, took over, it's been
a new CEO always means usually
change.
New creative direction, right?
Exactly. So I have a strong feeling that one is one to say yes to. Likewise, I mean, again, you just don't know what these people's agenda is, the creative directors themselves. They might want a break, a career break, or they might be, for example, I do think that Kim Jones would be a great fit for Burberry. I mean, Britain back to Britain. So, yeah, I can see it happening, but I don't know enough about his personal situation. Yeah, and
if that is the case, it would be Kim Jones' the last show at Dior for
that
menswear.
Would be, yeah, that would be.
Would be a historical show and quite a moment for Paris Men's Fashion Week.
One to watch for sure.
Androniki, what are the other Paris Men's Fashion shows to watch?
Yeah, I think one must watch from Paris Fashion Week, for sure, Ami Paris. It was one of my favorite shows, of course. And they are doing such a great job with women's wear, but menswear as well. This sophisticated, elegant look, it's absolutely stunning. And I would say for sure, if you want something more bold, Paul Smith brings some more color in it, and Isabelle Marant is one of the top shows as well. And I would say also Comme des Garçons. So if you want to see also something with an edge, but also always with the effortless style and timeless, I would say Comme des Garçons is the one to watch.
Thank you. Now, speaking of the fashion industry, I mean, the whole fashion industry was really hit by the TikTok ban that happened just last week, and it happened only for a few hours. But still, I was hit by that personally. I can speak from my personal experience. I wonder, was it just TikTok that is challenged now, or social media overall?
Yeah, I mean, I think it definitely puts a spotlight, doesn't it, on your vulnerabilities. If you are earning a living in particular, or using it as revenue stream drivers, even funneling it back to your own, websites or newsletters, that you are beholden to these platforms. And therefore, you need to diversify for sure, because if you have too many eggs in one basket, then, as I said, the cracks and the vulnerabilities can appear very quickly, as we kind of saw literally over the weekend. So I think even before that had happened, you would have to kind of take a viewpoint that you are better and stronger if you're robust across more than one platform. And I think previously that was always quite hard because, Instagram was very different to TikTok, and also the success of TikTok has really been that For You page and the way that you have that engine of discovery and that you can be catapulted as a brand or a person that's not even that well known and become a viral sensation overnight. So no other platform, I think, can kind of actually give you that kind of success in the way that TikTok does. So you can see why you would really use all that resource. And it does take a lot of resource. The shoppability, of course, has always been, very well sort of seamlessly thread in there through that affiliate partnerships where people then as influencers can earn money. And they've done that in a much better way. It's still relatively, even now, a bit clunky on Instagram, or if you're using YouTube Shorts or kind of Snapchat, it's just not the kind of same. However, they have all taken their inspiration from the success of TikTok. So I think what maybe becomes easier is that you can produce a universal strategy where if you think that you have, Reels and, as I said, Shorts and Snapchat have also, taken a leaf out of the TikTok kind of rhythm and algorithm book. But now you can create content that you can put across platforms that feels a little bit more fit for purpose. I think to begin with, you really had to have this rather laborious, strategy of Instagram is this, and it's much more polished. And I think TikTok has enabled people to be a lot more agile and produce content that feels a lot more real and engaging. But it is, anything where you are not housed on your own platform, you're at the mercy of algorithms changing, price points changing, governments changing. So it's a hard lesson learned. And I feel for people because I certainly know if you want to become successful, for example, at shopping on TikTok, then you're going to have to at least start with 20 hours of content that are consecutively across maybe 3 days running. Then you're going to have to do 2 live shows a week. They're probably going to need to be at least 2 hours long for you to be picked up by the algorithm in the first place. So you can see how you go down that funnel of thinking, and because there aren't enough hours in the day, and it's been very rewarding. But I think, it's time to sort of step back. I'm a great believer that for any business, you need a D2C approach. You need to have something within your armory that you control. And it is these platforms are all amazing for being shop windows, but you need to make sure that you're funneling that back to your mothership.
I appreciate you mentioning the differences between Instagram and TikTok. And when TikTok first launched, it's actually luxury fashion that really was ahead by it, because they were thinking, okay, at first, talking from a historical point of view, at first it was always legacy media brands, then it was social media. After social media, then we had this content media, which was TikTok. What future do you see in terms of, from advertising point of view, when it comes to luxury fashion and social media?
It is challenging for luxury brands because, they spend millions of pounds on their brand identity, and they are very controlling of that, and understandably so. And also that has always been the ivory tower of how luxury kind of, grew and put out its messaging. So now you're asking them to hand over control to make user-generated content that maybe does not align at all with their own personal vision, or, so it's really discombobulating because you are literally having to say, sure, you go do this. And that's a massive pain threshold to kind of go through, even if you even want to go through it. So I think, they've all seen that, by keeping control, you don't get the engagement, and everybody, doesn't buy into it. There's no authenticity in it. As I said, it's just simply not engaging. So Instagram has always been a much more place of comfort because you're allowed to be a little more polished in that space. It's a little bit different. I think TikTok is the Wild West for them, and brands are embracing it. I mean, TikTok do a lot of luxury resale now, and one of the reasons they do that is because the other brands haven't been quick enough, in a sense, to want to do it. So if you don't, the problem is if you don't use an addressable market, someone else will address it for you. So that is your challenge of how do I stay in the lane? You keep pace with culture, remain relevant, but still hang on to my brand identity and values. So, there's a lot to unpack.
I agree in terms of future, because everyone has been told social media is the future. Because of what happened with TikTok ban and the consequences that we saw, Do we believe that?
No, I think yes and no. I think the world is a mass of niches. And so I think we can be very beguiled by the idea that these platforms have millions of followers and it's all about these huge numbers. You know, when you really break it down, you know, you're following a finite set of people, you're maybe buying off a finite set of people. So actually it almost becomes, if you step back, a little irrelevant that you've got millions of people on a platform. I think that you can become a bit braver. And I think if you know who your tribe are and you know how to communicate with them and you can tell great narratives, then those people will come with you. So I think, yeah, that era of just mass platforms, now, by no stretch do I think they're going to disappear. I actually think as well sometimes...
You think that social media platforms will disappear?
No, by no means.
Oh,
I do not think that they will disappear. But I do think that, like everything, you know, life is very agile, things move at pace. And, you know, we've all seen transitions throughout time where we thought things would not disappear, and yet they do. So I think you just have to remain, you know, curious as to what is happening around you and be bold.
On that note, we will be curious, and what the future holds, we will see next Sunday. Stay tuned with Fashion News, and thank you for watching.